So let's take a look now how we can refactor some of this SAS here to reduce some of the duplication. And to do this, we're going to use something called a mixin. A mixin, as its name suggests, allows us to mix in a set of styles into one of our selectors. So if we look at our primary buttons here, we can see that we've got some duplication. We've got duplication in these font size properties here. They're both the same for primary button and secondary button here. And also the color here is the same in both our buttons. The only difference is this background color property. So one of the ways we can reduce duplication is to create a mixin that contains these 4 shared properties. So I've already reset these styles back to the original button styles, as we can see here. So let's go and refactor our SAS now. So to create a mixin, we use the mixin directive. We then need to give the mixin we're creating a name, so let's just call it standard button. And now we can define all the property values that are contained within this mixin. So down here, let's go and take the first set of properties here. And just paste it into our mixin. And we'll also go and grab the color here, because again this is the same through both buttons. So we'll just cut that out and paste it into our mixin. So just tidy this up. So now we can see our primary button only contains the background color. So if we have a look at this in the browser, just hit Ctrl F5, we can see now that our primary button here has lost all of its styles except for the background color. So now we've defined our mixin, we actually need to apply it to this primary button class. To do this, we use the include directive, and we can see in our IntelliSense here that it's telling us that we've already got this mixin called standard button. So let's select this and just add a semicolon. And if I save this now and have a look at our styles CSS, we can see that our primary button has all of these styles again. And we can see this in the browser. So now our primary button has regained all of the styles because we're including them from the mixin. Now we have our standard button mixin defined, we can now make use of it in other places. So again, for our secondary button, let's just delete all of the shared properties. And we'll go and include the same mixin here for our secondary button. And let's see now that we haven't lost any styles for our secondary button. And if we take a look at our generated CSS, we can see that both our primary button and our secondary button have this same set of shared styles from the mixin. And the only difference here is the background color. Here we've got orange and here we've got grey, and they come from the individual properties in our primary button class here and our secondary button class here. So we've reduced some of the duplication here, but we can actually improve this one step further by using a parameterized mixin. So let's head up to our mixin here, and in the parentheses here, we can actually declare a variable to be used as a parameter. So let's call this variable $button-bg, and now we can pass this in whenever we use the standard button mixin. So we can see how we've got this warning for these includes here. We're saying that there's not enough arguments for the mixin, so we need to provide an argument now. So what we're going to do for the button bg argument in our mixin, we're actually going to supply the variable important action color. And now we can delete this background color. And let's do the same for our secondary button. This time we're going to use the secondary action color variable that we've already defined. and pass that as a parameter to our mixin. So we can see now that the warnings have disappeared because we're providing the correct number of parameters to our mixin. But we haven't actually used this button BG parameter here in the mixin. So to do this, we can just set the background color property to whatever value has been passed into our mixin here. So we're just using the button BG parameter variable that we've defined in the parentheses. So if I save this now, have a look at our CSS styles, we can see that the generated CSS actually looks the same. We've still got our shared properties here. The background color property is now coming from our mixin, but we've parameterized it so we can set the actual value for this background color to a value that we provide in our mixin. And if we look at this in the browser, we can see that it looks the same as it did before. Only this time, in our CSS, we've reduced the duplication that we had in our button classes here. Another great use is to provide vendor prefixes. So let's go and create another mixin here. And we've called this mixin border radius vendor, and we've defined a radius variable for the parameter. And now whenever we use this mixin, we'll get all of the vendor prefixes for border radius automatically output for us. So let's go and call this mixin. So let's add some border radiuses to our primary button. And again, we just use the include directive. And this time we're going to choose border radius vendor. And we need to provide a parameter value. So let's say 20 pixels. If we save this and have a look at our CSS, we can see now that our primary button class now has border radius set of 20 pixels with all of the individual vendor prefixes applied for us. So this saves us a lot of time if we're doing a lot of vendor prefix work. And if we have a look at this in the browser, we can see now that our primary button has rounded corners.